We often hear stories about the end times. They say the world will end in fire and ruin, as if a harsh judge were coming to collect an ancient debt from all of human creation. This idea of punishment and destruction has been planted in our minds for centuries, generating a fear that keeps us small and submissive. But imagine for a moment that all these stories were focused on the wrong place. Imagine that the true apocalypse isn't about the world out there catching fire, but about something much deeper that happens here inside each of us. What the ancients called the apocalypse wasn't an ending or a punishment, but an unveiling. It was the act of pulling back a heavy, dusty curtain that prevented us from seeing what is truly in front of us. Long before modern books were written, there were groups of people who called themselves knowers. They spoke of a truth so powerful that it was buried by silence, because whoever discovers this truth can no longer be governed by fears or by men. These people spoke of a great illusion that covers the earth like a dense fog. They said that the world we touch and see was not created by an infinite and benevolent intelligence, but by a lesser, blind, and confused force. They called this creator the Demiurge, a being lost in his own pride who believed himself to be the sole king of the universe. To this limited creator, you are merely a piece on his chessboard, a battery of energy to keep his machine running. But within you, there is something he cannot touch, something he cannot even fully comprehend. There is a light that doesn't belong to this place, a spark that came from long before time existed. As Jung already intuited in his profound observations of the human soul, we live most of our lives in a state of deep hypnotic sleep. He perceived that what we call reality is often merely a projection of our own shadows, fears, and unfulfilled desires. For Jung, this mechanism of illusion described by the ancient Gnostics was not just a fanciful myth, but a palpable psychological reality that shapes the destiny of the masses. What the Gnostics called Archons, those invisible forces that try to keep us trapped in ignorance and conflict, analytical psychology recognizes as unconscious patterns that rob us of autonomy and consciousness. We live as if we were in a dream within a dream, believing that the walls of our prison are the only possible landscape. Humanity sleeps a night that seems endless, forgetting that its origin lies far beyond the galaxies we can observe with telescopes. The prophecy that survived in texts hidden beneath the desert sands says that a precise moment would arrive when this illusion would begin to crack. That moment is what we are witnessing now. You may feel that the old stories and the old promises no longer make sense. The explanations that once comforted your heart now seem empty and lifeless. This is because the tide of global consciousness is rising. The material dream is beginning to crumble under its own weight, and the divine spark that was hidden deep within your being is beginning to stir. Imagine a very special toy that has forgotten it was made by a marvelous craftsman in a kingdom of infinite light. This toy spends its entire life believing that its dark, cramped cardboard box is the entire universe. It suffers, it feels an inexplicable tightness in its chest, and it feels profoundly alone, even surrounded by other toys. But suddenly, it notices a small sliver of light on the lid of the box. This sliver is not the end of the world for the toy, it is the beginning of its true existence. The apocalypse we are talking about here is precisely this sliver that opens in the human mind. The Demiurge, this confused and jealous craftsman, built the box so that you would never have the desire to look up. He created incessant distractions, complicated rules, and paralyzing fears to ensure that you remain focused only on the cardboard floor, counting the grains of dust. Jung perceived this hidden mechanism of distraction and warned about how we get lost in social roles and masks that the world forces us to wear every day. We cease to be beings of light and become mere shadows, wearily walking in a cave of illusions. The ancient texts found in Nag Hammadi reveal that Adam was not someone who committed a terrible error and was expelled from a garden by an angry father. In fact, Adam represents humanity itself, a being of pure light who descended from a place of absolute perfection called pleroma. Adam's fall was not a moral failing, but a courageous plunge into a deep and necessary amnesia. Upon entering this world of dense and heavy matter, Adam's original light was obscured by the gravity and pain of this place. He forgot where he came from. He forgot who his true spiritual father and mother were. He became a prisoner of time. This collective amnesia is what allows the Archons to maintain their dominion over our thoughts and emotions. They feed on our lack of memory and our sense of helplessness. As long as you don't know who you truly are, you will accept the crumbs of happiness that this world of appearances offers. They weave confusion in your mind through news, conflicts, and superficial desires, creating constant noise so that you cannot hear the silence that speaks absolute truth. But the reign of these forces has an expiration date that they themselves fear. The prophecy contained in the Apocalypse of Adam assures us that a new light is returning to awaken all those who still sleep the sleep of matter. This force is not an external savior who will come in a chariot of fire, but a quality of consciousness that reappears from time to time to remind you of your original brilliance. The end of this era is not a tragedy, but a planned return home. It is the moment when the seed that has been kept in darkness for millennia finally feels the warmth of a different sun and decides to break the hard shell that protected it. This process of breaking free can be uncomfortable, as the shell is all the seed has known for a long time. However, what awaits on the outside is a freedom that cannot be described with human words. If you feel this is the moment to break through your own shell and wish to tread this sacred path back to the primordial source, write in the comments now the phrase that seals this commitment to your own soul. Type with conviction and clarity, "I am the awakening spark." By doing so, you send a vibrational signal to your own consciousness that the veil has begun to be definitively lifted. Humanity's true destiny is not to disappear into oblivion or be destroyed by external forces, but to transform itself again into the light it has always been. We are living in the exact historical moment when the collective dream begins to falter and the truth begins to shine from behind the dark clouds of structured ignorance. This is a solemn invitation for you to stop looking at the shadows dancing on the wall and begin to look directly at the light that projects them. The journey is only beginning, and the revelation to come will change every atom of what you believe to be real. Reality is cracking, and through these cracks, the infinite is whispering your true name. What was once a dangerous secret now becomes liberating clarity for those who have eyes to see. What was paralyzing fear now becomes a serene power of transformation. You are not witnessing this by mere chance of fate. You are here because your soul has finally decided it is time to remember. Adam's prophecy is not about the end of humanity, but about the end of the invisible chains that bound the human mind to the ground. Awakening is a silent process that begins with a small sigh of recognition within the chest, a recognition that this world is merely a train station and that your true home lies far beyond the horizon your physical eyes can reach. To understand the true weight of this ancient prophecy, we need to return to a time when remembering the truth was considered the greatest of crimes. Between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, small circles of seekers scattered throughout the ancient world began to speak of a reality that lay far beyond what the physical eyes could reach. They considered themselves not merely believers or followers of a religion, but people who possessed direct knowledge of the soul. These men and women hid their writings so that the light would not be extinguished by the brute force of empires. It was only in the year 1945, in the hot sands of Egypt, that these secrets returned to the light of day. In the Nag Hammadi library, scrolls were found that would forever change what we think about spirituality. Among these texts was the Apocalypse of Adam, a revelation that supposedly came from the first man to his son Seth. But this is not the story, you know. In this version, Adam is not a sinner who disobeyed out of curiosity. He is described as a being of pure light who descended from a higher dimension, a realm of fullness that the ancients called the pleroma. Imagine the pleroma as an infinite ocean of light, where there is no separation, pain, or time. Adam and Eve were like perfect waves of this ocean. However, upon plunging into the density of this material world, they were caught in an invisible net. The creator of this world, the Demiurge, was fascinated by the light they carried, but also felt a profound fear. As Jung already intuited, the blind creator represents the part of our mind that desires to control everything unknown. The Demiurge, in his ignorance, believed that this light belonged to him. To keep human beings under his control, he enveloped them in layers of matter and forgetfulness. The fall of man, therefore, was not a moral error, but a cosmic accident. It was the moment when light became a prisoner of the flesh. Jung perceived this hidden mechanism when he spoke about how the human ego often tries to become the center of everything, forgetting that there is a much larger and older center within us. The material world became a kind of labyrinth, built so that the soul could never find its way out. In this Gnostic narrative, the human body is seen as a heavy garment that hides the true form of the spirit. Adam and Eve walked in glory before being clothed in this density. The Demiurge and his helpers, the Archons, worked to make the couple forget their divine origin. They wanted human beings to believe they were merely dust and earth, subject to the laws of birth and death. But even in the deepest darkness of matter, the original light cannot be completely extinguished. It remains there, like an ember hidden beneath the ashes of a hearth. What we call daily life, with its worries and incessant pursuits of pleasure and security, is often merely the Archons' effort to keep the ashes over the embers. They fear the moment when humankind will look inward and realize that it is greater than the world around it. Jung warned about how we become slaves to our own creations when we fail to recognize the strength of the soul that dwells within us. The emotional connection we feel to the mystery comes from this stifled memory. There is a kind of sadness that many people feel without knowing why, a feeling of not belonging to this place. The Gnostics said that this is the longing for the pleroma. It is the part of you that remembers the infinite light and is not content with the artificial illumination of this cave. The Apocalypse of Adam tells us that, although the Demiurge tried to erase the memory of the first man, messengers from higher realms appeared to whisper the truth in his ear. These messengers brought the knowledge of Gnosis, which is the immediate recognition of our true nature. Prophecy says that the history of humanity is a long spiral of forgetting and remembering. We are not walking in a straight line, but rather in cycles where the light tries to emerge through the cracks of illusion. The world you see around you, with its cities, laws, and distractions, is the Demiurge's attempt to create a perfect yet lifeless copy of divine reality. He uses physical beauty and the fear of loss to keep your attention fixed out here. But the ancient text reminds us that humanity's true destiny is to break these chains. As Jung perceived, the journey of individuation is the process of removing the masks and finding what is imperishable within us. It is the act of becoming aware that you are not the role you play in society, nor the emotions that float in your mind. You are the silent observer, the spark that survived the fall. The secret they try to hide from you is that your light disturbs those who rule through the shadows. When you begin to feel this inner glow, their control begins to falter. Material reality, which seemed so solid and unbreakable, begins to reveal itself as a mist that can be dispelled by a single ray of true sunlight. The prophecy of the Apocalypse of Adam unfolds through cosmic events that are often interpreted literally by those unfamiliar with the secrets of the soul. One of these events is the Great Flood. In the Gnostic view, the waters that covered the earth were not a punishment sent by a just God, but a desperate effort by the Demiurge to extinguish the sparks of light that were beginning to shine intensely in humanity. The blind creator perceived that Adam and his descendants were recovering the memory of their higher origin. He was afraid of losing control over his creations. So he tried to flood the world to drown consciousness and restore absolute ignorance. The flood was, in fact, a symbolic war against knowledge, but light is subtle and cannot be destroyed by material elements. As the waters rose, certain souls carrying the hidden flame were protected by forces the Demiurge could not see. The text speaks of 400,000 souls of light scattered throughout time, remaining as guardians of truth. These souls are hidden among ordinary people, waiting for the signal to awaken. Have you ever wondered why you feel different from most people around you? Why worldly pursuit seems so empty to you, while mystery attracts you with an irresistible force? As Jung already intuited, there are universal patterns that connect certain people to a spiritual heritage that transcends biology. You may be one of those sparks that the flood of illusion could not extinguish. Every 3 generations of thought, the mind tries to pull us back down to earth. The Demiurge uses doubt to make us question what we feel deep in our hearts. He whispers that we are only flesh and blood, destined for nothingness. But the prophecy mentions a mysterious figure called the Illuminator of Knowledge. He is not a man who lived in a specific time, but a stream of consciousness that traverses the ages. He appears whenever the darkness becomes unbearable to remind seekers that dawn is near. Jung perceived this hidden mechanism of psychic renewal, where the new is born from the ashes of the old. The Illuminator enters the dream of matter to tell us that we are dreaming. What the ancients called the Deluge, we now recognize as the sea of information and distractions that tries to drown our capacity for reflection. We live inundated by noise that prevents us from hearing the voice of the Spirit. The Archons are the masters of this flood. They create artificial conflicts and endless desires so that we never have time to look to the inner sky. However, the imperishable seed remains alive. The Apocalypse of Adam says that those who possess Gnosis will pass through the waters without getting wet. This means that, even in the midst of the world's chaos, it is possible to maintain clarity and peace if you know who you truly are. The question that echoes through the centuries is simple, yet capable of shaking the foundations of your reality. If the entire world were a construct designed to deceive you, would you prefer to continue living in the comfortable lie, or would you face the uncomfortable truth that sets you free? The answer to this question defines whether you are a passenger on the Demiurge's ship or one of those who walk on water. Jung warned of the danger of living an unexamined life, for the forces we do not recognize within ourselves end up becoming our external destiny. By recognizing the mechanisms of the Archons in your own mind, you begin to drain the waters of the personal flood. History is not a straight line leading to destruction, but a divine spiral. Each cycle of forgetfulness is followed by an opportunity for revelation. Gnostic texts teach us that the power behind these revelations is the reason they were persecuted and buried. A humanity that remembers its own divinity cannot be enslaved by any system or ideology. The awakening of a single soul weakens the structure of all illusion. How do you feel realizing that your own consciousness is the battlefield where the fate of the universe is being decided at this very moment? Answer in the comments so we can recognize each other's signals. Do you feel your inner light growing stronger in the face of the world's chaos? To delve into the Gnostic narrative is like entering a labyrinth where the walls are made of our own thoughts. The Apocalypse of Adam reveals that the true war does not take place on external battlefields, but within the structure of our perception. The Archons, these guardians of the labyrinth, do not wield swords, but beliefs. They convince us that matter is the only thing that exists and that our salvation must be sought outside ourselves, in objects, people, or institutions. This is the final trick of the Demiurge, the blind architect. He builds a world of mirrors where you see only what he wants you to see. He inverts the truth, making what is transient seem eternal, and what is eternal seem like a fantasy. Jung perceived this hidden mechanism of inversion in his studies of archetypes. He understood that powerful forces act in the collective unconscious, shaping human behavior without our realizing it. For the Gnostics, these forces were the Archons, beings that feed on our ignorance and emotional energy. They create the illusion of separation so that we feel isolated and helpless. When you feel fear of the future or regret for the past, you are providing the nourishment that keeps their dominion intact. They thrive on conflict and duality. The goal of Gnosis is to transcend this duality and perceive the unity that sustains everything. Imagine you are in a room full of television screens, all tuned to different channels, blaring contradictory messages all the time. This is the state of the average human mind. The Archons are the directors of this programming. They want you to identify with the stories that appear on the screen, to suffer with the characters, and to forget that you are the one sitting in the chair, watching. Awakening begins when you decide to turn off the screens for a moment and perceive the silence of the room. This silence is your true essence, the spark of the pleroma that cannot be captured by any image or concept. It is what Jung called the self, the center of psychic totality that remains undisturbed in the face of the storms of the ego. The prophecy of Adam describes a moment of great cosmic upheaval where the rulers of this world begin to tremble. They question each other about the origin of these human beings who carry the seed of light. They are terrified to realize that their power is based on a lie that is being uncovered. When you recognize an Archon in your life, whether in the form of an addiction, an irrational fear, or a social obsession, its power over you begins to evaporate. They only dominate while they remain hidden. The light of knowledge is like a spotlight that reveals that the terrifying monster was merely a shadow projected on the wall. The material world is described in ancient texts as a testing ground, a cosmic classroom where the soul must learn to distinguish what is real from what is apparent. The Demiurge is not a villain in the common sense, but a rigorous and confusing teacher who believes in his own rules. He created this system to test the strength of your memory. If you can maintain the connection with the light even amidst pain and distraction, you prove that your nature is divine and imperishable. Jung warned about how the soul needs to traverse its own shadow to find the light. There is no escaping the test, only traversing it consciously. What they tried to hide from you, is that the way out of this world is not through physical death, but through awakening in life. Death is just another tool of the Archons to recycle the soul in the cycle of forgetfulness. True liberation happens now, the moment you become aware of the game. The Apocalypse of Adam invites us to be spiritual rebels, to not accept the definitions of reality imposed on us by culture or biology. You are an infinite being living a limited experience. When you behave according to this truth, the laws of this world begin to lose their effect on you. The gravity of matter cannot hold a mind that has already flown back to the pleroma. The outcome of the Gnostic prophecy is not an event of physical destruction or senseless terror, but an extremely intense and profound process of inner purification. The ancient text speaks of a fire descending from the heavens, but this is not a fire that burns the skin or destroys cities of stone. It is a fire of recognition that consumes only the illusion and lies that cover the human soul. Imagine for a moment that you have spent your entire life wearing several layers of old, heavy, and very dirty clothes that prevent you from moving freely or feeling the warmth of the true sun. The apocalypse is the sacred moment when these clothes are finally thrown into the flames so that you can walk with the lightness and purity you should always have had from the beginning of everything. Everything that is false in you, every lie you have told yourself about who you are, and every heavy social construct that imprisons you will be slowly dissolved by this intense light. What remains after this conflagration of pure consciousness is only what is eternal, imperishable, and real. As Jung already deeply intuited in his studies on the processes of soul transformation, the end of a great psychological cycle often seems like the end of the world to our limited and fearful ego. When the structures of false security on which we base our entire lives begin to crumble before our eyes, we feel a terror that seems to come from the bottom of an unknown abyss. But this collapse is absolutely necessary so that the true light of your soul can shine without any obstruction from material forms. The Archons enter into total panic during this transition process, for they themselves are part of the great illusion that is being burned by the force of truth. They desperately try to create clouds of dark smoke and much mental confusion to hide the magnificent light that descends from the higher realm of the pleroma. However, the sacred text of the Apocalypse of Adam states that luminous clouds of pure light will completely envelop those who have awakened, protecting them all from the definitive dissolution of the lower realms that are controlled by fear and ignorance. In this moment of profound transition and total revelation, a provocative and inevitable question arises on the horizon of your mind. What would remain of you if all your titles, your personal history, your material possessions, and even your name were taken from you this very second? If you can find something within yourself that remains intact and calm in the face of this total loss of external identity, then you have finally found your imperishable seed. It is this part of you that the Gnostics called the spiritual man, the rightful heir of the light that cannot be touched by time or death. Jung saw in this courageous encounter with the creative void the unique opportunity for the birth of the true being, the one that does not depend on shadows to exist. Most people flee from this question with all their might because they fear that there is absolutely nothing behind the mask they wear every day. But the Gnostic seeker knows that the mask is merely the veil that prevents the direct vision of their own divine face. The prophecy also describes a sacred and mysterious baptism that takes place at the end of the age of illusion. This is not a religious ritual with physical water in a stone temple, but a deep dive into the ocean of living, direct knowledge. The living water mentioned in ancient texts is divine consciousness itself flowing freely through you, washing away millennia of accumulated forgetfulness and weariness of the soul. It is the glorious moment when the soul finally recognizes that it was never separated from the original source, not even by a millimeter. The separation was merely a very well-crafted trick of perception, a thick fog that the Demiurge breathed over humanity's eyes so that it would feel orphaned. By fully immersing yourself in this absolute truth, you become part of the eternal current that moves the universe back to its origin of peace and wholeness. The heavens we know now, with their physical sun and silver moon, are described in the texts as thin veils that will tear before the new reality. The power of the Archons over the gears of time and space will begin to fail miserably. They will be like shadows that instantly vanish when the main light is turned on in the center of a dark room. The apocalypse of Adam clearly teaches us that we should not fear this moment of rupture, but rather desire it with all our heart and all our will. It is the end of the long exile in matter, the end of the exhausting journey through the desert of appearances. You are not a stranger or an invader in the higher realms. You are a rightful heir, finally returning to take your rightful place at the table of the Pleroma. As Jung always warned, the fear of the end is almost always just the fear of the radical change that leads us to our own wholeness. For this light to descend upon you, there must be an empty and receptive space. The celestial messengers, radiant beings known as Abri, Sablo, and Gamaliel, are archetypal forces that come to rescue the memory of the awakened. They bring no judgment, but recognition. They look at you and see the same light they carry. They work on the seed that does not die, helping the soul rise above the waters of the mental flood that the lesser creator tries to use to drown us. While the world outside is lost in the noises of war and anguish, these messengers whisper that the storm is only a sign that the dream is about to end. The fire of purification is clearing the path so that spiritual humanity can walk without the chains of the past. As you observe the growing chaos and confusion that seems to engulf the world outside, always remember that these are clear signs that the structure of illusion can no longer sustain itself for much longer. The immense weight of the Demiurge's own lies and limitations is causing the foundations of material reality to begin to crumble and crack. This is the precise moment to strengthen your inner vision and not allow yourself to be carried away at any moment by the whirlwind of fear that the Archons are desperately trying to generate throughout the earth. They want you to fall along with their system, for they feed on your despair. But you possess invisible wings made of pure gnosis and awakened consciousness. The final revelation is that the apocalypse is not something that happens to the physical planet, but something that happens to the mind that finally decides to stop believing in the lie of separation. Are you ready to see what truly exists behind the falling veil? Or would you rather close your eyes and wait for the painful dream to continue for another cycle of forgetfulness? Write in the comments what you feel you should leave behind in your life in order to go through this purifying fire with a light and peaceful heart. We have reached the point where the narrative ceases to be an external story and becomes your own personal journey. The Apocalypse of Adam was not written merely to be read, but to be felt as a map of return. Humanity's ultimate destiny is not death in a decaying world, but total transformation into the light from which we came. The prophecy assures us that the end of all things is, in fact, the recognition that nothing real was ever lost. The light you carry within you now is the same light that shone in Adam before the fall. It traversed ages of darkness, survived floods, and withstood the attacks of the Archons only to be here today, hearing this call. To apply these concepts in practice, you must begin to observe the world with the eyes of someone who knows they are in a dream. When fear knocks on your door, ask yourself who is feeling that fear. When anger arises, observe the energy moving without identifying with it. This is the beginning of awakening. You begin to relinquish the power you gave the Demiurge over your peace. As Jung perceived, the path to healing the soul passes through the integration of all our parts under the light of consciousness. By recognizing your divine spark, you begin to act as a citizen of the Pleroma while still walking on Earth. You become a channel through which the higher light can enter this world of shadows. The final invitation is for you to take responsibility for your own enlightenment. Don't wait for external miracles or saviors to descend from the physical sky. The illuminator of knowledge is working within you right now, through every moment of clarity and every act of compassion born from truth. Gnosis is a fire that needs to be fed daily with the practice of self-observation and detachment from material illusions. Humanity's destiny is to become a community of awakened beings who, through their very existence, dissolve the dominion of shadows. Every soul that remembers home opens a door so that others may also find their way. This is the moment to seal your commitment to the truth. If this message resonated deep within you, it is because your divine spark recognized the call of the Pleroma. Do not allow the noise of the world to drown out again that silent voice that speaks in your heart. The prophecy is being fulfilled through you at this very moment. The veil is being lifted, and what remains is the infinite beauty of your true origin. The time of ignorance is coming to an end, and the age of light is only beginning for those who have the courage to remember. Thank you for walking with me through these ancient secrets and profound revelations. If you felt this content brought new clarity to your life and awakened something important in your soul, please like this video so the message can reach more lost sparks in the dream. Comment below with your reflections on the true destiny of humanity and share how you intend to apply Gnosis in your daily life. Subscribe to the Gnostic Mind channel to continue receiving these mystical and psychological guidance that illuminate the path back home. Always remember that you are not a prisoner of matter, but an emissary of divine light who has forgotten your mission for a moment. Awakening is now. The journey ends where it all began, in the infinite fullness of being. May the peace that surpasses all understanding be with you as you walk towards your true destiny.